everybody's goals are different, but I think generally speaking, most men have like, they don't want love handles. They don't want man boobs. Like, they want to look good. And I'm like, dude, we can blow that out of the water. You got to set a higher expectation for yourself, because having that low level mindset has always kept you down.
Get ready to tune into stories of average men striving for greatness, to become the leaders that are needed in their homes, in their career, and their communities. This is the Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast.
What's up, guys? Today I have with me Griffin Jerke. Griffin is the owner of Legacy Fitness and has a really cool story to tell about his own personal journey over the last few years that I'm excited to dig into. If you do not subscribe to this podcast, stop right now and push that subscribe button. And if you're not a part of the Brotherhood of Fatherhood Facebook group, jump on over. Or if you're just anti-Facebook, you can catch almost all of this stuff on Instagram too. Griffin, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always fun to talk with a fitness guy, and our buddy Jason connected us. And yeah. How do you know Jason? He was on the podcast just recently.
Yeah, I mean, Jason's just an amazing man, and just he's become a good friend through the process. But really, we met. A lot of gym owners throughout the country network. They work with some similar coaches, so we met. And Jason was actually a coach that my wife and I had started working with. Jason then transitioned into something else, and we've just stayed connected through the time.
Yeah, it's really cool meeting people. When you're reaching out to get coaching or help, the people you meet are incredible, and it just seems to be like this string of like one person to the next person to the next person, and it really expands your network. Is that kind of how you kind of went through your journey? Is grabbing coaches like early on, people like Jason? And was he a business coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think early on I was probably a little bit more resistant to it, dumb and naive, and thinking that I had a lot of things figured out. I think the further along you go in the process, you recognize that you don't know anything, So I had worked with a couple of different coaches, a couple of different programs, and had success levels all over the place, with some places that exceeded expectations, others that certainly fell short. During the pandemic, the whole fitness industry changed. It changed entirely, from facilities being shut down and all those things. And, as we had started to work our way through that, we were looking for a kind of a boost in member retention and some other things, and sign up with the program. Jason was the coach that we got assigned. And, he's one of those guys that exceeded all expectations and just was real genuine, real pure. He was a coach, but he was also there as a friend if I needed anyone.
Yeah. I mean, it was with him, it's quick and fast. Like he's in your world and he's connecting, and so it's just when he connects me with someone, I just jump right on board, because he's done a really good job of just networking. And I'm not going to be shy about it. We're going to talk about coaching and kind of how it changed your life. You're a business owner. You own a gym in Minneapolis, Minnesota. How long have you been a business owner?
So I got into the fitness space in 2005. And, like a lot of people in the industry, I started at like a big box gym, right, as just a personal trainer. 2008. So 3 years after doing that, I recognized that, I wanted more, all those things. And I just started renting space from a couple of different locations, just kind of running my business as it is. As it continued to grow, I continued to evolve. And so about 7 years ago, I opened my own space finally. And so, I've been a business owner since 2008, but I've had my own physical location, since about, 2015, somewhere in that window.
Yeah. So was that your first business, is fitness business?
Yeah. That's, I got into the industry. I got a business degree in school, at college, and I had always liked working out. And I kind of got into the industry as like my sister, who was in it, said, it's a great part-time job if it never becomes a career. Outside of being a server, you're never going to make more money than being a coach or a trainer part-time. So I kind of just took those words and got certified, and then I just liked it. I got good at it, and I don't think I got into it ever thinking it would evolve to where it has become. But it's a learning process the whole way. So, myself, it's been a lot of different steps and a lot of different roles, from just being that coach and being that personal trainer to now, like, I'm a business owner that just happens to be into the fitness space.
Yeah. I like to ask questions about entrepreneurship, because so many men will say, I've always thought about I've always wondered what
Yeah,
it would be like. I always, have this idea in the back of my head, and the more I kind of unpeel this onion, if you will, because I've been through multiple iterations. I've had multiple
sure,
businesses, and I have my experiences, some great, some good, some really good. So they've all been
sure.
great, but that's just my DNA, right? Like and sometimes I think we feel like it's in our DNA, and sometimes I think it is, but there's that itch that so many men want to scratch. And as an entrepreneur, it's the more we can share about this process, the ups and the downs and the isolation.
Oh man.
Yeah,
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 I mean, it's like riding a roller coaster. You can just have the most amazing day and things are going great, and then the next day it's just like, what the heck is going on? Like everything's going wrong, and man, it certainly challenges you and just helps you. You got to keep a calm head and just try to keep on an even keel and just know that there's ebbs and flows with everything.
yeah, yeah. It's so true. How do you deal with the loneliness part? I know you do business. I think you do it with your wife. So you've got your
Yeah.
wife, but there's still this, at least for me, even when my wife has worked with me in my businesses, even when I've had a business partner, there's still this like little journey that you're doing on your own, and you feel like you're on an island. Do you still experience that?
Yeah, so my wife and I, we have three coaches that work for us, and so just a lot of the internal battles that I have is like the responsibility of having a staff and wanting to fulfill all the things that you talked about. So a lot of what I do is to help fulfill those wishes, those promises, those expectations. So yeah, I mean it's tough because there's good days, there's bad days. Learning to work with your spouse is an entirely different animal. My wife
Absolutely.
has an exercise science degree and she was a trainer, but she got out of the industry for a long time. So when we got to the point where our business was at the point where it was either you come on board and do all these little tasks or these tasks that just quite frankly I'm not good at that are just necessary. I'm going to hire somebody, and she ended up coming on board. And just learning to kind of stay in your own lane is a really big thing, not only just for business, but just for our marriage in general.
Yeah, that's a really good that's a really good teaching point right there. I struggle with that with my wife,
Oh,
even
all right.
staying in our own lane. Like, she has her business, I have my business, but I always want to kind of like come in and be like, well, have you thought about? And as a husband,
So
sometimes
I'm not alone in that then.
it's one of those things I've talked about many times. Like I when I'm good because I come in and I say, hey, I noticed X. Would you like me to support you through this tough time, or would you like me to help you through this tough time? Like, do you want me
Oh
to
man.
take action, or do you want me to just listen? And quite frankly, almost always it's just listen. Like, okay. And now she's at the point where she just comes and she's like, hey, I need actionable help. I'm like, yes.
Right. Well, I think it's not what's said. It's how you say it, right?
Yeah,
And it's just
right.
how you present the solution. So I love that she's a part of what we do. She's certainly better at a hundred tasks that she takes care of, are all
Hmm.
things that I certainly struggled with that I just kind of managed to get by. So there's a lot of structure and there's a lot of things that are certainly better off than they used to be.
Right.
Um, but as the guy that like it was my business and she was always there to support as I needed. But I still like things done my way. And my way's not always the right way, but that's something that we've navigated. And as we've worked together for the last year and a half, 2 years, essentially full time, uh, things have gotten better and better and better with the occasional speed bump or whatever you want to call it.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. There is, I've actually owned a gym with my
Yeah,
wife. We've done that together and we've been through that. And man, it really challenges you to learn to communicate, to learn to stay in your lane. I mean, that's just the probably the biggest thing is like constant communication and then just stay in your lane. So, before we got started,
yeah,
I really like your story because you talk about some transformation that you personally went
yeah,
through, and the fact that the transformation. I'll let you tell your story, but the fact that it was physical, but so many more things happened. And the one thing that I really kind of latched onto was it's weight or fitness
yeah,
transformation. And here you are as a business owner of a gym, right? And everybody thinks on the outside, thinks that gym owners have it all together with their fitness. I remember I had to really, really work hard to do my own fitness because I was always worried about everyone
Sure.
else. So I want to hear that story because I think it's really quite impactful for men who have once been fit or
Sure.
feel fit, but really aren't, or not maybe feel, but kind of are. I think we lie to ourselves that we're actually fitter than we are, or there's always this excuse like, well, it's this time of my life, or, it's just a bad dad bod, which I absolutely can't stand personally, but I want to hear this story from you.
Yeah, I mean, if there was an excuse out there, I gave it, right? And what I was doing is I justified all of my bad decisions. Every bad decision that I was making, I spun it in a way that I could justify to allow me to continue to do those things. So whether it be I don't have time because I volunteer at my kids' school, I coach their sports teams. Man, I really take care of my clients. This, like I said, I had it all, right? And I said, my clients deserve the best. They deserve the best. So I'm going to give to them. When really it was just an excuse that I was using that I believed at the time to, like I said, justify bad decisions and poor decisions that I was making within my health and fitness. And, as I started to go backwards, I remember, and I was always a pretty fit guy. I don't think I was ever at the level that I desired, right? Like I looked better than most. They were never going to put me on the cover of a magazine by any means, but I felt okay.
Right.
But I remember, and it didn't take long. I remember thinking the scale is never going to, I'm 5'10" and a half, right? Like I'm not that tall of a guy, but I'm like, the scale will never be 220. Then I hit 220. And then I said, it's never going to hit 230. Then it hit 230, 240, 250. And it got up to 261 pounds. And there was so much going on in my life in the negative then. And I remember saying to myself, that was just a bad weekend. The weight's going to go back down, Monday through Friday. And it didn't. Right. And I remember laying on my couch and I was wrestling with a lot of negative thoughts. And it was kind of springtime. This is just 2 years ago, 2020. Wow. And my kids are 10 and 8 now. So they were 7 and 5 then. And they were outside. We live in a cul-de-sac and they were learning to ride their bikes or out their bikes for the first time of the year. My wife came in and I was sitting on the couch. She said, Griffin, come outside. Like Drake is learning how to ride his bike, like help him. And I was tired. I felt like crap because I probably ate like garbage the day before and I was probably hungover. And I just said, no, I'm not going to do that. And she went outside, whatever, probably slammed the door. And I remember that night just laying in bed thinking how big of a loser I was. Like I had gotten to that point where I was ashamed of the dad I had become. I was certainly embarrassed with how I was looking. And this is like COVID was running wild. So you could wear sweatpants and a t-shirt. And the only time you saw your friends was over Zoom, right?
Right.
But it happened so fast. And I remember I broke down in tears and I was scared. I was really, really scared because I had become a version of myself that in my wildest dreams, I never thought I would get to. And out of desperation, out of fear, like I'd been a trainer and a coach for a long time. I had seen some guys, making some pretty big transformations. I had reached out essentially to work with a coach. And I remember I signed up with my coach who I'm in Minnesota. He lives in Wales, like in the UK.
Yeah.
Like didn't know him, was just referred. And I signed up for a year and not really knowing exactly what I was getting into. I just knew I couldn't stay where I was.
That's
and I remember
commitment.
getting up. Yeah, man, I was kind of all in. And my wife goes, how did it go? I go, I signed up for a year. And she said, I thought you were going to do like 12 weeks. I said, yeah, he kind of said, well, your goals are more than 12 weeks out. Why do that? And anyways, she's like, what did it cost? And I had never spent a dime working with anyone before. And it was $4,900. And I just paid it all at once. And my wife said to me, and I'll never forget it. And this is like, we're not on good terms at all because I'm angry, I'm ornery, I'm short with everyone. And she said, you just spent $5,000 without even a conversation. And I said, Kate, I spent a lot more money than that gaining the weight. I figure I didn't have to ask if I could spend it to lose it. And I'll never forget, my wife said, you've said a lot of stupid things in your life, but that's probably the smartest thing you've ever said.
Wow. Yeah.
And it changed everything. So, and it was just like nutritional coaching, right? But, 5, 6 months later, I was 50 some pounds lighter. Like I looked like an action figure, like abs popping out, felt better. Like, as humble as I can be, like the transformation was as good as you see in magazines where you're like, that's a bunch of BS. There's no way.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, physically it was huge, but like you talked about earlier, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and all of my relationships, man, the return was, tenfold on all of them.
Yeah. That's the part I think a lot of people miss. One, the fact that your wife supported you, several things I want to reflect on there. You made a decision based on like, I need help. I need to do this. A lot of men are afraid to do that. And I think like, I really think most women would be like your wife. Like, that's good. Good for you. I think they want us to do the things that are going to make us better. Because I'm sure she sees a difference in you as a
Oh,
father, as a husband, as a business owner.
yeah, I mean, it's night and day. I mean, when I was speaking with my coach, I think it's really important. You have to know exactly where you are. You have to be really real with yourself. And I was the guy that had used every excuse in the book. I don't know how many times I told myself I'm starting on Monday, like Monday's the
Oh
day that,
man.
and it just Monday turned into never. And I remember my initial conversation with my coach. He's like, "Well, what do you want?" And like, I'm a man. I'm pretty simple. I go, "I want my wife to look at me like she used to." I go, "I want to take my shirt off on my boat and look better than anyone else." And I kind of just want my wife to look at me like I'm a piece of meat. Like that's what I desired. I desired
Right.
my wife to look at me like, like when we first started dating. And he just starts laughing. He's like, "Those are the ultimate man answers." I go, "I know, that's what I want." Right. Like it had nothing to do with being healthier, but those were my initial goals. I didn't have a desire to be a better dad at that point. It never even crossed my mind that that would happen. So as I started making these changes, man, I just started feeling so much better, and my confidence started to really, you know, higher than it had ever been. And it's kind of interesting. Like one of the things that I said was like, I want my wife to look at me a certain way. And I really attached it to a physical attraction. Like you look good, you don't have the dad bod, you look better. But my wife will tell you, she goes, "Yeah, you're a lot better to look at right now, but the way that you walk around with confidence now
Hmm.
is what I'm attracted to." And I find like I've had this conversation with many different people. Like confidence is what attracts women. Confidence is what your wife is into. It's not the desire about how you look, but just I had become so much better of a man and like walking around with confidence in everything that I was doing. And it changed how I parented as a dad. It changed my relationship with her. And that all just started by prioritizing my health and fitness and really getting rid of all the BS excuses that I had used, because you know what? Now I was still doing all the same thing with my kids and more. I was still
Hmm.
doing all the same things with my clients and more. It just, uh, it was so much different when I said, "You know what? I'm the one as the head of my family, I need to take charge, set that example for my kids. I'm not my kid's friend. I'm my kid's dad." And that's what they need. They need somebody to lead them and show an example. And, I see a lot of dads that want to be friends with their kids. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to lead and teach them how to be a man, to be men, to great men in the community and great with relationships.
So funny you bring that up. I kind of think through like content I want to build because
Yeah.
it's really important to be always kind of like letting people know where you're coming from. And the one thing I came to this morning, and I'm still trying to like formulate it correctly, was you should not be thriving to be your kid's best friend. Like it
Yeah.
is not your role. You also said that your wife, yes, your physical attractiveness, but it was that confidence. And
Right.
I don't know that that can be said enough because so many men like and I think that's society. We look at the six pack, we look at the guys that they're looking at on movies and maybe swooning over or
Right.
whatever. But really it comes down to, you know, are your shoulders back? Do you feel confident when you walk in a room? Are you commanding the things that you're in command of your life, or just kind of riding along? And it sounds like you were kind of riding along, and you just like, okay, I'm going to open the door to this vehicle, get in. And, but when I come out, I'm going to be a different guy. I mean, it
Yeah.
was,
I mean, even when I started, I wrote down, my coach was like, write down everything that you want to desire. And I kind of listed the 2 or 3 things, and I struggled to get like a list of 10 things. Now, if I had to come up with a list of what's different in my life, I would be writing for days, because every single thing is so much better.
yeah.
You know, my business has exploded. It's significantly better than it had ever been. My relationship with my wife, like, I think we had gotten to that point, like a lot of people get into with relationships, where it's like you almost take each other for granted. And it's just like, there
Yeah.
was times it was almost like we were roommates, right? And
Mhm.
that's not what I wanted. I wanted, you know, I love everything about my wife, but I wasn't showing her anything that she deserved at that point. And, you know, bless her heart, because, you know, never once did she ever express to me that she was unhappy with how I looked. But these are conversations that we've had since, and it was almost like she was afraid to say something, didn't know how to say something. Like, it's a really touchy subject, and it's a really challenging thing to talk about. Um, and quite frankly, I wish friends, family, I wish my wife would have said something, but
Mhm.
in society, it's really frowned upon. Like, you could never just say, "Hey, Scott, you know, you're getting a little pudgy in the midsection. Like, you better put down the donuts and pizza." Like, you can't say that. Like, but
You
I
get
wish somebody would have
offended.
been just real with me, man,
Yeah.
because I needed it.
Yeah. I learned a really good lesson. I was in South Africa with my family. We were on a trip, and we were getting kind of like this prep, and a
Yeah.
guy there said, "Just so you know, when you talk to South Africans, if they look at you and say, 'Oh, you want to go see the fat woman right there. You want to go talk to that really super old or that really sick looking
Yeah.
person.'" That's how they and it's just part of culture. Like, yeah,
Right.
okay, yeah, I'm fat. And so and they don't get offended by it. And we're in our culture, we're so offended by it, we can't be honest with people. And you're right. Walking that line of communication with your spouse and being, you know, very honest,
Yeah.
like, "Hey babe, I'm concerned. I don't feel like you're taking care of yourself. It's not about how you look, it's about how you feel. And I think that we need to do something. How can I help you do something?" And I think it's really prevalent for women. But again, this whole dad bod thing, there's marketing going out now. Hey, here's a shirt you can wear that covers up your dad bod. And you
Oh,
know,
man.
it's sexy. And that's just that's just people selling. That's
Yeah, I
all
mean,
marketing.
it drives me nuts how society has really started to just say it's okay, whether it be, you know, the chubby mannequins at all the sporting goods stores, or in all the clothing stores, or, you know,
Oh my gosh.
I love that people can be happy with their bodies, but I don't think putting a woman that's 100 pounds overweight in Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue, I don't think that's okay, because that person's really unhealthy,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And it's a tough conversation to have, but the reality is, like, statistically speaking, half of America is going to be obese in the next 2 years. I think I read
Wow.
the other day, I read that, you know, diabetes is going through the roof. The average American who's diabetic, it's $17,000 a year in medical expenses. I mean, think
That's
about that.
crazy. That's
That's
crazy.
insane. And um, you know, I wrote a post the other day that, you know, I was probably looking at my health and fitness very similar to a lot of people did. I looked at it as an expense. My gym membership was an expense. When I certainly invested into my nutrition coach, I'm like, geez, 5 grand. Like, I paid it. I didn't want to pay it, but now I look at it as so different. Like, it's truly an investment into
Mhm.
yourself that is going to return so much more than anything else out there. And when you start recognizing that, you're going to be in such a better place.
Yeah. Yeah, our paths are very, very similar. So
Yeah.
when I owned a gym, I was probably in my ideal weight. I
Yeah.
wasn't able to gain muscle, and that was really hard for me. And there, you know, looking back, there's a reason now. But I was still working in the fitness industry, you know, 2 years ago, and I was 30 pounds overweight.
Yeah.
Now I was working out 5 days a week was the minimum. Doing CrossFit, doing strength training, doing extra walks, I
Yeah.
was doing that. And I was in and out on nutrition. But the thing here is that you need someone in your life who's going to be able to take a view from the outside and say, oh, you need to pay attention right here because there's signs and we don't see them from our angle. We don't, we
Yeah.
can't.
I mean, I connect with my coach multiple times throughout, especially early on, 2, 3, 4 times a week we would connect. Now it might be once a week. I need him in a different role right now because I've
Right.
created habit and discipline in areas that I had struggled with for a long time. Um, but yeah, you have to be real to yourself and recognize that it's never easy. Like the things that I struggled with before, they're still tough. It's still tough to eat healthy. It's
Mm-hmm.
still tough to work out when you're tired. Now, I've certainly gotten better at making those choices because I like the benefit. But yeah, I don't know if it ever becomes super easy. I think you can get stronger because, if you could say you can watch Netflix, eat a bag of Doritos and lay on the couch and you're going to get abs, I'd probably choose that 10 out of 10 times. That's just not the case, right?
I heard this from somebody and it really resonated with me. And you actually said it. I don't know if you identified it, but you were like, when you made that decision, you talked about your commitment to your wife and your kids. And I really believe that these big changes come when we tie the work we have to do to an actual commitment.
Mhm.
So when it comes to the kitchen, I'm like, I'm more committed to my family than I am to this moment in the kitchen.
Yeah.
I've gotta make the right decisions. Then I started to mark data. Like I was like became a scientist, like data, like what happens when X and Y, and I'm down 25 pounds
Yeah.
regularly, normally, and finding a new, baseline. But I think that commitment is a switch. You made a commitment by saying, I'm in this for a year. And then you made a commitment saying, this is how it's going to affect my wife and my kids and my family and my legacy. And
Yeah. I mean,
you own
yeah.
Legacy Fitness.
Yeah. The name is perfect. I recognize that accountability is so much, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was the person that I was accountable to so many people at my church, my neighbors, my family, my friends, my clients. Like I was accountable to all of them, but I had continued to ignore the accountability with my health and my fitness. Like it just always struggled. And I recognized that when I had somebody setting some expectations and walking through a plan of action that was best there to help me, like I performed like never before.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I had to, essentially submit some homework or there was expectations that I set for myself, I performed at a level that I had never performed before. And so there's a lot of truth to like, you don't like to let people down. The last
Right.
thing I wanted to do was step on the scale the next week and tell my coach I gained a pound. Like that ain't fun. Now I will tell you this he's just an amazing coach and he helped me recognize that not every day, not every week is going to be perfect. Right. But that's just life. But what we can't do is let one bad day, one bad week roll into the next. Right. And so let's rebound. Let's recognize that we're people. We're really, really flawed. We like to enjoy certain things in life, but let it be for that moment. And then let's start making progress again. And when I did that, it certainly helped. I will say this. I put blinders on for the first 5 months and I was just all in, I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't drinking and it was so important to me. And people look at, my results and they're like, that's insane. I go, I just did it. I didn't question it. I over delivered. And I think that could be the truth with so many things in life. Like if you take a small step forward every day, you're going to make progress. But if you want to really go, start sprinting. And that's what I did. And I got to the point where it's certainly easier to maintain. Like, a year and a half later, I'm 40 years old now. I'm in the best shape that I've ever been in. And it's really wild to think where it started just a few short years ago when I was, I'll show you the pictures and you can add them to this. But yeah, man, I was fat. I was the fat dude with bad COVID hair and ratty mustache, and it was ugly.
That's but it's awesome, but it's real, right? I mean, it's so real. But I have probably the most important question you've ever
Yeah.
had is, and I'm saying that sarcastically. How in the world did you work with someone from Wales? Their accent is so thick.
Well, the funny thing is, so my wife studied abroad in Wales, so she just loves
Oh
his name
my
is
gosh.
Ryan, and she just loves his accent. But yeah, it's thick. It's certainly funny. Um, but the way that it's really about, building rapport and building trust with somebody
Yeah.
that you believe in,
Yeah.
and he created that right away. And, recognizing that early on, I had to start taking actionable steps that I could believe that I could follow. Like it wasn't do all these things on day one. It's like, let's just focus on this one little task and then we'll build into it. So I like to give the analogy. It's almost like I was thirsty, but I needed someone to turn on a drinking fountain, not a water,
Mm,
not like a fire hose, because it would have been too much, too fast. And so as I started to make progress, as I started to get further into my journey, as I started to believe that I could do more, the tasks that were challenging early on, they just became second nature. And I was able to start, taking on bigger things.
yeah, it's really good. The power of a coach is indescribable. A lot of people will look at the financial implications or, I can't
Yeah.
afford it. And I always say reframe yourself like Robert Kiyosaki. How can I afford it? What are you going to do? Because
Yeah.
if you reframe it, you'll find a way. But the one thing I know, Griffin, and I think you might know this too, is that anybody who I see from my view as successful, maybe outside of corporate has its own little way of making you
Yeah.
successful without personal growth, but someone who's successful outside of that realm, especially business owners or laborers or just blue collar people, guess what they do? They hire a coach.
Yeah.
Like it's maybe fitness, maybe it's in mindset, maybe it's in creating a vision and mission, like my buddy Matt Chenard does, like really define your purpose, find out where you're going. That is where you will see. You could ask anybody that you kind of place on a pedestal and like, oh man, that guy is kicking ass or he's really successful. Hey man, what's one thing that you do that has gotten you here? I have coaches, I have a mentor, I have a coach. I mean, I could say very, very strongly that I bet that's 99.9% of them.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at if I had to list the top 100 people that I know that are fit, all of them have worked with a coach or continue to work with a coach. Probably the same can be said with business. Like,
Yep.
I read something today or heard something that's like you're either going to pay for it financially to get ahead or you're going to take time to get there. And I didn't want to take the time to learn how to do it. I would rather pay and get there faster so that I could, we're only here for a short window of time.
Times you can't buy
And
more time.
you know,
Yeah.
when your health sucks, when you're struggling, that's the only thing in your life that matters at that point. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of bad things to happen in your life sometimes for people to wake up, but when Steve Jobs passed away, he would have probably given every cent that he had ever worked for to just have one more day, one
Yep.
more week of good health.
Absolutely. You said something earlier I want to kind of spin back on because
Yeah.
it's important to talk about, and that's, I don't want to be friends with my kids, and then you talked about the skills and the things that are more important. Would you mind going a little more into that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've always been kind of a tough dad in a good way. Like we have a great relationship, but I challenge my kids to do things that they don't necessarily love doing in the moment. But that's just life, right? So, things that they enjoy, they love playing football, they love playing baseball. Those things come easy. It's easy to practice those things. But both my kids play guitar and they love it when they're in their lesson, but they don't necessarily love doing it every single day. And my wife and we've disagreed on this. She's like, why do you care so much that they practice their guitar? I said, because I know when they're older, they're going to be thankful that they do it. And for the fact that it teaches them discipline, it teaches them that to get what you want in life, you're going to have to do a lot of things that you don't necessarily love doing every day in the moment, right? Like there's not very many people that love going to work, but they love the benefit of having a paycheck and what it offers in their life. And I think
Mhm.
it's just a small example of what you can start doing in your day to start pushing yourself, to start challenging yourself. Almost like David Goggins. David Goggins says, challenge yourself every day. Do something that you hate every single day.
Yeah.
And when you kind of go into it with that mentality, it creates a callous and a toughness in your body and your spirit and your mind that allows you to start taking challenges that are just harder and harder. And I just look at my kids and they're little, like they're young, but I see where they're at versus other kids their same age, and it's night and day. And you know, everybody can raise their kids how they think is best. But I see other kids in other areas that struggle socially. They're afraid to look they're adults in the eye. They don't know how to shake somebody's hand. They don't use manners. Like these little things that you can teach and implement with your kids, hard work, like those things are going to show, and those are going to be the things that are going to help you become successful. I don't care. Like when I go to conferences with my kids, it's like, how do they interact with other people? Are they being leaders? Are they polite? Like, I don't even care how they do at school, right? Like, those are
Right.
the things that don't necessarily matter that much to me, and they take care of what they need to take care of, and they're good students. But there's so many things that are lost, especially in today's society, as everything moves faster and social media, and just when you're with your kids, are you actually with your kids or are you on your phone? You know, one of my friends, John, said to me the other day, he goes, I actually went to my daughter's gymnastic practice and I left my phone in my car, and for an hour, I just watched her practice. And he goes, I counted 16 times that she looked over at me to see if I was paying
Wow.
attention.
That is powerful. And it's
And he
so
goes, and
true.
I'd always just been like this, like another practice that I just have to sit through. And I'm not perfect, man. I've got a lot of
Mm.
areas I need to work with, especially owning a business. Like it's 24/7. Um, but the quality of time you spend with your kids, the quality time you spend with your spouse certainly outweighs the amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Couldn't have said it better myself. There's that one, the kid looking over at you. And I've been like an observant of this, and I am certainly still working on it. But in the
Yeah.
stands, your kids are playing, their heads are on that swivel. And I'll watch a dad who is engrossed in his phone during a game because I
Yeah.
know a lot of the dads, and I'll watch him and I'll see how many times his kid looks, and then they just stop. There's a point to where
Yeah.
they just stop looking because, well, I don't have the affirmation of my dad. He's not paying attention. I am not important. And you can actually see performance just drop. You can physically
Oh,
see their countenance
100%.
drop. Yeah, and it's if parents, if dads knew exactly what happens physiologically and emotionally to their kids when when that occurs, man, all of us would be leaving our phones in our car
Yeah.
if we care even a little bit. And then there's the lie of my work is caring for my kids. I mean, you've got to work your
Yeah.
ass off. That's important, but there's a time and a place that you got to turn it off.
Yeah. I mean, those are conversations I have with men and father. Like that's my passion is working with men and fathers in the fitness space. And it's just
Mhm.
like, it's an easy excuse because there's some relevance to like, I work to provide for my family, but I didn't become a dad to live on the sidelines in my kid's life, like just to pay for him at baseball or pay for him to do a camp or pay for him to do this. Like, I don't get enjoyment out of just doing that. Like, I want to live these moments with them. Like, my kids they're halfway out of the house at 10 and 8, and it's gone by like that.
Right.
I mean, it goes by so fast. And the amount of time that you actually impact your kids, it's a really small window. Like, I think like after 12 or 13 years old, the amount of impact you have on them is like, it's thin. And
Yeah.
it's YouTube, it's their social circle, it's the school that they're going through, it's just society, the messages that society pushes, which I disagree a lot with. Like I want my kids to be leaders. So one of the things, like my kids, my my oldest son Lincoln, he wants to be the quarterback, he wants to be the pitcher in sports, and I said, I love that you want to do that, but what you do every day is going to dictate if you get to do that when you're in high school or whatever,
Mhm.
right? Because
Mhm.
everybody wants to be the quarterback. There's very few kids that want to be an offensive lineman or a D tackle or a linebacker in football. Like everybody wants the spotlight. So if you want that spotlight, you've got to work like you really want it, like you deserve it. And reading with them, watching positive movies, talking to them about encouragement, like that's a really big deal for our family.
Yep.
And I would encourage, anybody that has kids to start doing things that are going to push them, that are going to challenge them, that are going to motivate them. There's a lot of amazing stories out there from, rags to riches, or, Tom Brady's story from being a backup quarterback in high school,
Right.
you know?
There are, and
So,
that has so much more to do with work ethic, character,
yeah,
leadership than because that's when the things that matter really start to happen. You said something earlier. You said, I don't care how they do in school. And I've really struggled with this because I'm a past teacher. I
yeah,
don't care how my boys do in school as long as the effort is there and
yeah,
they're but there's so many things that they have to do in school that are just asinine.
sure.
But I care about what happens in between their ears, how they're talking to themselves, how they're approaching things that they are approaching, and are they doing the things that they're doing with excellence? And I think as a society, we need to focus more on those things that you talk about. Those things they're tangible, but they're not tangible. They're
Yeah,
these skill sets. Another thing that I think is incredibly important, I think you would agree, is modeling. So, I go into the gym every single day. It's actually at my house because I used to own a
yeah,
gym, so I have all the equipment. It's in the garage. I go in there every single morning except for Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and I lift weights. My wife goes in there every single morning and
Right.
works out. My son, who is 14, has started band, and band in Texas is a big deal. He starts at 7 a.m. He gets at school at 7. He gets home at 9:30. Like, it's serious. He band started 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, he's been working out with me every morning. I never ask him. I've never said, hey, you should work out. He just comes and he's like, hey, would you build a plan for me? And I'm like, hey, your schedule's about to change. He's like, yeah, we're going to be in the gym at 6 a.m. And I'm looking
Cool is
back and
that?
I'm thinking, okay, all of that consistency, I was talking earlier about not being able to lose weight, even though I was super consistent.
Yeah.
Who cares? Right now, I don't care because my son now has seen that consistency and it's like, no, yeah, I'm gonna have to get up an hour earlier than I would have to, and it's gonna be torture. And I mean, every night I'm like, hey, are we good? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. All right. And he's there like
Yeah, I mean,
clockwork.
it's so important to, do things that are tough. It's tough for a kid to get up and work out at 6 a.m. But think about all the benefits that he's getting by starting to do that. Just,
Yeah.
man, the discipline is huge. Another thing about regarding coaches that just kind of came to my mind, I love being able to provide, appropriate coaches for my kids. Like, I was the guy growing up, very middle class family, and things in the 80s and 90s were very different with sports. Like there wasn't anything specialized, but it's amazing how different your kids react, or just people in general react to having a coach versus what you're saying. So, baseball coaches or football coaches or their guitar teacher, or even when they work with like a tutor in school in the summer, they react very, very differently. And I think it
Right.
teaches them a lot about respect. I think it teaches them a lot about follow through. And as these coaches, teachers set expectations on what they need to do over the course of the next week, like they do it,
Yeah.
and so I love the fact that we're putting them in a position where they're starting to learn from other people that I approve of, that I love the methods that they use, and there's so many benefits, man. I just see it from my kids, and it's just so great to see and to be that dad and be proud of what the effort that your kids are doing, and just the leadership that they're showing.
Yeah.
So it's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
I know a guy, Dennis Meralda, who he was a principal,
Yep.
and he built this program in a school called Building Men, and it was for adolescent boys, middle schoolers, and like learning how to shake a hand, learning how to
Yeah.
do these things. And he's gone in now and he coaches like
Wow.
teenagers. Like he is like the mindset coach. And it's
So cool.
incredible to watch, like the parents that are actually willing to say, hey, here's 3K or 5K or whatever it is. And it's not performance based, it's just life based. But the fact is, that's going to that's going to have a huge effect on performance. That is just astronomical. I love that some parents are willing to put in the money. That's another thing I would say to parents, like, hey, don't just focus on the baseball coach. Like, sure, if you want your kid to have a little edge, getting a personal coach is great, but think about the other things that are going to affect his or her ability to get to the next level. What is the long-term thing? It's the mindset. It's the way you
Yeah.
talk to yourself.
I mean, it's amazing how having just being able to have real, like, I don't talk to my kids like little kids. Like I probably at some point talk to them, maybe even like they're older than they really are, but the way that they respond and just the way that they interact, it's got me really proud as a dad. And the older my kids get, the more fun it gets, and
Mhm.
the better our relationship goes. And my kids were young, but they remember when I was fat, when I was unhealthy, when I'd come home with fast food every night for dinner. Like they
Yeah.
remember that version of me. And the scary thing is that had just become normal. Like they didn't look at me as like, I can't believe dad's doing this again. That was just the norm. Now they recognize that things are so different. And man, you have to take care of yourself. Doesn't matter how smart you are, how good you are at anything. If your body's failing you because you're not taking care of it, I mean, that's all you got, really.
Absolutely. So let's wrap this up. I want you to be able to like just talk directly to men who might be
Yeah.
struggling with their weight or their appearance or their self-esteem. What's your like last little message to them?
Yeah. I mean, I think, getting help, and, men, um, I think most people would agree women are more intelligent than men, and they make a lot more rational decisions. But I speak to so many people every single day, and it's not like I was a coach for 17 years and I needed help. It's not, do I know how to do it? It's like, are you actually going to do it? Like, yeah, I knew how to eat healthier. I knew how to work out. I wasn't doing it. So knowing and doing are different. So don't be afraid to have a help, because you are going to be more accountable, but you need to really get real with yourself. I think so many people lie to themselves. You said something early on that most people don't recognize how far out of shape they are.
Right.
So even when someone tells me, hey, I want to lose 20 pounds, they'll send me a picture. I can see it's more than 20. Now, everybody's goals are different, but I think generally speaking, most men have like, they don't want love handles. They don't want man boobs. Like, they want to look good. And I'm like, dude, we can blow that out of the water. You got to set a higher expectation for yourself, because having that low level mindset has always kept you down. Always looking at things as, I'm not that far gone, has always hurt you, because you always thought that it was within arm's reach, and it's not. It's further than that. You have to push yourself. You have to challenge yourself more. And so be real with really where you are, and recognize that if you want this to change, you have to look at this as, I'm looking to make a lifelong change. You're not going to get there in 6 weeks. You're not going to get there in 8 weeks. And when you do get there, that's kind of the easy part. Staying there is tough. Like, there's a stat that says 97% of people that lose 20 pounds or more gain it back within 2 years.
Yeah.
So think about that. So, growing up, my mom was always out of shape. She didn't work out, didn't take care of herself. She said to me, and I was little, and I remember this, I was probably 8 or 9. She said, Griffin, fat people in America know how to lose weight better than skinny people. We just keep losing the same weight over and over again. And I never forgot it. And that's the truth is, you have to want more. You have to push yourself. You have to get out of your comfort zone. And I really think you giving some authority to somebody else to allow them to, like you said, they see things that you don't see. They can help set you up for success. They can help you navigate the paths when they see some red flags popping up. And that's just what an awesome coach does, is they help you become a better version of yourself.
Absolutely. You remind me of a story. There's this woman that I was talking to when I owned the gym, and she's like, I want to lose another 100 pounds. I'm like, wow, that's a big goal.
Yeah.
And she's big lady. And she goes, I've already lost 300. And I'm sitting there doing the math. I'm like,
Yeah.
So were you ever 600 pounds? No. She just kept counting weight that she lost and then gained. I think a lot of people lie to them that themselves that way. I've lost 40 pounds. No, you're at baseline from when you started.
Well, yeah, like we said earlier, it's really hard to have a tough conversation about someone's health, because your friends, your family, they don't want to make you feel bad, right? And it really, when you start doing things that challenges their comfort level with themselves, like, Griffin, you're having another chicken salad at lunch, like, well, why didn't you ever say, man, you just ate a whole pizza again? Like, nobody ever said anything on the negative.
So crazy.
But my health and the way that I wanted to change really changed how people looked at what I was doing. And it got them uncomfortable. It got them uncomfortable that I was doing something different. So I had to detach from a lot of the people that I hung out with, just because they were negative. They weren't a lot of the people who I thought would be just naturally your biggest support system. They're not, because they're my buddies from high school and college that they liked the version of me that, went to happy hour.
Didn't make them uncomfortable.
Yeah. And, I think the older you get, most people, their circle gets little. Like my circle that I hang out with, it's like, it's arm's reach. It's not that deep. And it really pushes people to, really look at you and what do they want to do? So I'm happy that I was able to do that. I still have friends that never want to work out, never want to eat healthy. That's great. But I think they're further away than they used to be with me, because just my interests, my priorities have really changed. And being a better dad, being a better husband, and just being a better man in every aspect of my life trumped any of those things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Griffin, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
There's so many nuggets in there. So many. I
Well, thank
appreciate
you.
it. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time and having me on. And I appreciate everything that we just did.
Thanks, brother. Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode. If you want to find out more about Griffin, or if you live in the area, Minneapolis, definitely check it out.
We've got a big an online presence and an online programming too.
Awesome.
We work with people all over the country. So
there you go.
Find me on Facebook, Griffin Jerke. We've got some cool things that we can talk about.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So check him out. And if you haven't done so, go subscribe to the podcast, rate it. We want to know, just rate it. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, be sure to share it with your friends, your family, and follow us on social media. If you are a father, make sure you join our Facebook group, The Brotherhood of Fatherhood. Hit the subscribe button and tune in next time for more podcasts from the Brotherhood of Fatherhood.